this week's program. We're going to be doing a fair bit with sports horses this weekend, and we're also going to be looking at cropping with Dennis Carter. But in just a moment, it's World Affairs. Kerry, it's fair enough to say, I guess, that the European farmers are a bit more militant than we are in a lot of ways.
Yeah, quite a large bit more militant. In New Zealand, the farmers tend to be part of the establishment, but for some reason European farmers don't appear to be engaged so much in elective office and that sort of thing. So they're much more inclined to take to the streets, and we've just seen that with thousands of them demonstrating in Brussels over low commodity prices. Not really the fault of the European Union that they have low commodity prices. That affects everybody around the world, but nevertheless the Union has now decided to, I think it's 500 billion euro, which they're making available more to the farming community. It's a massive amount of money, and so the demonstration appears to have worked. But they're much more inclined.
Very well, I would have thought.
They're much more inclined to demonstrate. I mean, I recall some years ago French farmers turning over on the road, overturning truckloads of Spanish tomatoes because the Spaniards, for some reason, had the cheek to have spring earlier than the than the French, and their crop was indeed not allowed to do that. So they do tend to be a bit more aggressive and a bit more assertive. And sometimes Paris gets filled up with tractors, people driving tractors and protests and so on. That's just the way it's been, and farming because Europe has had its share of wars, thankfully none for some time, but food and food production and the certainty of food for the population is always very close to the mind of not just farmers but of urban policymakers as well, because the masses do have to be fed, and so most of the European Union budget and historically has been devoted to support for the farming sector, which our farmers, of course, have protests about, but haven't driven tractors into Paris over it.
You can't imagine the Fonterra suppliers suddenly hitting the streets of Christchurch and Auckland and Wellington and protesting, can you?
No, you can't. No. I mean, that's just the way it is. No, our farmers tend to be much more into the establishment. They tend to be good business people. Some of them take too big a risk and then they get bitten if the commodities lower in price. But it's a different mindset from on the continent.
As far as the subsidies over there, obviously they're still very much alive and well.
Yes, they are, and they've had, as I understand it, and they have had production caps as well, so that they knew how much they could produce and they knew what their income would be. Recently, the European Union has indicated that it's lifting the production caps, and that's had a negative effect on milk prices, for example, around the world, because people now anticipate that there's going to be greater production than there has been. Just as with oil, they're anticipating now the Iran deal with the United States, Iranian oil will start to flow, so more downward pressure on oil prices, which will please farmers, of course.
Absolutely, please me as well.
Indeed.
I drive a six-cylinder car.
Oh, okay. Gosh, yeah, not me.
Is Russia still in that mix because of the closed gates?
Yes, it is, yes. Yeah. They are, in fact, they've been burning European Union products, milk products, which they found, cheese and that sort of thing. They've been setting a light to them because they're not supposed to be rorting the system. The European Union is punishing Russia for its annexation of Crimea, but some people in Russia like to import European cheese, and when they're found, they are punished. Yeah. So the Russians are now trying to get big deals with China. China is developing dairy farms, I think, of 100,000 cows on the border towards Russia. Putin's been to Beijing. Xi Jinping has been to Moscow. But the downturn in the Chinese economy is damaging that cosy relationship a little bit.
But it would be a union that I would feel a bit uncomfortable about.
Yeah, well, generally they've been antagonistic towards one another. That was the great communist powers who fell out 50 years ago. Mao broke with Stalin, and their relationships never returned. They're basically watchful of each other, I think. But Putin has to find an outlet for Russian gas and oil. China is prepared to do that. He has to find alternatives to buy goods from to Western Europe. But the downturn in China's economy and its production, because nobody really believes the data coming out of China. It's
Oh, really?
Amazingly, they can produce the official stats miles ahead of anybody else in the world can do. So nobody really believes them. We do know that growth is slowing, and that's impacting the Chinese ability to provide Putin with the support he's looking for, having lost access to Western Europe.
And Kerry, this week Rainbow Warriors reared its head, and you were right in the middle of all that.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I was in the cabinet when we had to deal with the Rainbow Warrior, the tragedy of the fatality there. But as a small country, dealing with a powerful country within an even more powerful union in Europe, it was in our interests to have a settlement of that, and we approached, through the United Nations, we approached Ruud Lubbers, who was Prime Minister of the Netherlands. He acted as the arbitrator under the Secretary General of the UN, produced an arbitration which both governments agreed to, in which the French Prime Minister at the time, Chirac, apologised in English, very difficult for a French Prime Minister to apologise, paid money. Our access to European markets was secured. And the final thing of that was that late one night after I'd had dinner with my sons in Christchurch, I went down to my mum's little cottage in Redcliffs, and as Minister of Immigration in the Longy government, at a few seconds after midnight, two very large police officers arrived, and I signed the deportation orders for Mafar and Prieur. Yeah.
So you really were right in there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that was my role. It was we had to do it. Some people said, "Oh, we should have kept them in jail," but the bigger picture was we had to look after New Zealand's wider interests, and I think we did.
But that's diplomacy at its best, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
International diplomacy, and nobody knew.
Nobody knew. No. Oh, they kind of knew something was going on, but nobody knew. And I was asked, what was I? Yeah, by lots of journalists in Parliament. What are you doing with it? I'm just going out to Christchurch to have dinner with my sons. That's all.
Had to go and see your dear old mum.
It wasn't a lie, because I did have dinner with them.
Are we still that vulnerable? I guess we are. As far as international diplomacy is concerned.
Well, was it? Yeah, we're a small player. Well, we're a medium-sized player. We're not. I mean, there's probably 100 countries smaller than New Zealand in population and landmass and that sort of thing. But we're a small player compared with a country of 60 or 70 million people, which is a highly industrialised country. It's got some economic woes of its own, but it's still a very strong nation. And de Gaulle exercised the veto to keep England, to keep Britain out of the European Union for some time. We did not want to be in a position where France was eternally hostile to New Zealand over that particular issue. So it was in our wider interest to get it settled, and we did. And much to our benefit, I must say.
Kerry, thank you very much indeed. In just a moment, we're going to be talking about something which is probably going to fix a few aches and pains. Well, we've got some pretty interesting jewellery, but it's got a kick to it.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we've been selling it for probably 3 or 4 years now. It's called Choosy.
What is it?
It's a nano chip, so it's a new technology. So it's been around for, I think it's over 10 years now that's been around, and it works on stimulating your own body's response or immune response or circulation and that. So,
is it a bit like the magnets and other bits and pieces that people have been using?
No, totally different. Like the magnets are natural, so they've been around, magnets and crystals and that. So we're in the health food industry, so they've been around for a long time. The Choosy is a new technology, so it's a man-made technology. It's been developed in America probably, maybe it'd be more than 10 years ago. The guys that developed it, they were working for the military, so they were into high-tech sort of military stuff, and they come across these Choosy chips. We don't actually know what the technology is for obvious reasons, because they don't really want to spread it around. But no, it's new. It's not a magnet or a crystal or something like that. So.
Now, there would be a lot of people who would go, "Oh, snake oil."
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Every time they come in there and you're looking at these things and they go, "Oh," but the reality is, it's like a lot of our products. As I said, we've been in the natural health industry for years. you can get all the data and all the research and that on it, but what really counts is what happens when you put them on people. And we have, with our Choosys in the store, we have 100% money back guarantee. If they don't work, we said we'll just bring it back and give them back. I don't know how many thousand we've sold, we've had 3 back. They just work, people come along and they put them on, predominantly for pain. Like, so people will come in, they've got aches and pains and that, and they'll put a Choosy on, and then they'll come in and they say, oh, I'm not sure if it's really working. It's pain's sort of gone away, but I don't think it's this thing or not. And we'll just say, oh, we'll take it off. Oh no, I don't want to do that. And then that's the ones that are sceptical. And then other people just rave about it. They'll say, look, within minutes they could feel the difference. So no, they're really, they're an amazing piece of kit.
So we don't know how they work, we just know that they do.
Yeah, oh well, yeah, exactly. There is a lot of research on, like, so you can look online and there's a lot of data in that, but at the end of the day, yeah, that's the approach we take. We say, look, just try it, if it doesn't work for you, we'll bring it back. And as I said, we don't get many back.
Now, your shop's in Ashburton. With all due respect, mid-Canterbury farmers are probably just a little bit cautious about things like this.
They're usually pretty sceptical, but it's interesting with farmers, as you say, they're sceptical for a start. But once they get into it, they really embrace it. Like, we've got a lot of farming. You'll get a farmer come in, or perhaps his wife, and then within a short period of time, you have the whole family in, and then their family in. So once they get onto it, they really like it. So yeah.
And it's interesting that they don't look like smoke and mirrors or anything like that. It just looks like a normal piece of jewellery.
It does, yeah. You can get them lots of different things. So I have one that's a bracelet. You can get a sport band ones, which are probably more practical for if you're working for farmers or labourers or builders, things like that. So there's a whole heap of different ones. You can get them in rings. I think you're all wearing a ring in that.
I do wear a ring, actually, yeah.
So it just depends how you want to carry them.
And necklaces and ear thingies.
Yeah, rings. Yeah, I haven't quite got into that, but yeah.
We're obviously out in the country, so what about animals? Can they be adapted for animals?
It's interesting you say. We've put them on animals, you put them on dogs and that, because we know people look after their pets sometimes better than themselves, and horses. But we're just trialling on cows. So we've had some trials that have been running for the last wee while, and we're just waiting for data to come in. So that looks really exciting. So yeah.
So I guess you're looking at pain and just general well-being.
Yeah, well, yeah, predominantly, but there is a lift in production as well. But generally, with on the animal ones, you are looking at animal health, but there seems to be a lift in production. But as I say, we're in trialling stages at the moment. But it's more the animal health than anything. Yeah.
Now you mentioned dogs and cows. What else?
Well, they can put them on anything. Like a Choosy, how it works is it stimulates blood flow. So anything, as long as it's got a heartbeat and blood, you can put it on anything. Predominantly it's your domestic pets and that there, but as I say, there is an application for a farming application. So.
Well, if you can lift production, it's got to be good, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is, it's all about in the dairy industry. I was in farming years ago, but not in the dairy industry, and it's very much based on production. If you can lift the production, but they seem to be more interested in animal health. If you can get the health of the animal, seems to be what they're looking at. So.
But that goes hand in hand.
Of course it does. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And after the break, we're going to be talking cropping with Dennis Carter.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things. Make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Dennis, there's been some research into plant genetics. Obviously that goes on, but
it does go on, Rob. Yeah, more in line with global change, climate change, and some Liverpool University studies have come out and said that over 15 years, I've just completed the study that says that basically the plants they've studied and they've induced climate change over those plants, that they have genetically altered, and that they do believe that there is a potential for a evolutionary rescue, which is another way of saying plants do adapt and continually change, and we see that all the time with biotypes emerging, and you know, if you have salt tolerant plants and we have a salt incursion, and within a few years you have salt tolerant plants who cohabit that place. So it's not all doom and gloom. Nature is a wonderful thing, and it's a changing evolutionary thing, and we should start using the terminology evolutionary rescue.
Evolutionary rescue?
Absolutely.
Because that's basically what the plants are doing.
Yes, well, you know, I've always been a fan of saying that extinction is an evolutionary process. And basically I believe it is.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you know, the best, or the ones that can adapt to the climate, or changes that, not necessarily just climate, but changes, will survive. And the weaker species, probably you'd say bad design,
Design fault.
design fault, will disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, okay, man gets in the middle of it and says it has to rescue everything, but nature's doing it for us if we just allow it and watch it and monitor it.
Well, you look at something like possums, and apparently in our New Zealand native forest, because the possums spread so quickly, the plants, I understand, have reared themselves into a toxin which is reducing the numbers and keeping
Right.
the numbers level. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Classic example.
Yeah. Changing the subject slightly, humus?
Yes, Rob, and this is a natural sort of a thing, that the more humus or organic matter we return to the soil, it improves the soil compounds in terms of its moisture retention and friability, those types of things. And so if we irrigate crops, we grow bigger and better crops and bigger and better root systems. If we fertilise them, we do exactly the same. And if we have that biomass increased each year, we'll return more to the humus to the soil, and therefore it's self-sustaining. If you don't irrigate, if you don't fertilise it, if you say go organic, you are going to get reduced yields, reduced biomass, reduced volumes of humus or nitrogen, organic nitrogen or carbon back to the soil, and it perpetuates itself the other way. And they've actually found in Europe that where yields have stagnated perhaps for up to 20 years, that biomass going back into the soil, or that humus, is slowly and slowly and slowly reducing. And it's almost like a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So keep irrigating, keep fertilising, keep putting it back, look after our carbon in the soil.
Now, bees. Bees are one of your best friends, aren't they?
They are, and actually they're just emerging at the moment from their winter hibernation, basically, and they're not in very good shape at all. They're I've had a really cold, long winter, and reduced feed, reduced activity, except for the varroa. The varroa are really, really on top of the bees, and the hives are, the spring brood is emerging very, very sluggish, very, very slow, and so they are really looking for some good spring feed to perk them up, cheer them up.
Tree lucerne.
Tree lucerne, those types of things. wattles, gorse, those sort of things, to really get them going because they're under real threat. But another thing is what's happening is Environmental Protection Agency is looking at some of our insecticides we use in the organophosphate and carbamate family and saying, well, okay, we need to do more and put more on the label to protect our bees from the re-entry period into a crop at flowering time. And so they've extended some of the times from application to pre-flowering, the number of days before.
Good idea.
Yeah, an excellent idea because, if you go and spray your roses in the middle of the day when the bees are visiting, you get a
Genocide.
Genocide, absolutely. It's going to be, you're going to wipe them out. Same with flowering crops.
Yeah.
So makes good sense.
It's a hell of a late and slow spring, mate.
It's incredible. It's we've hardly hit 8 degrees it's measured at 9 o'clock and reasonably shallow in the soil, but we've hardly hit 8 degrees, and so things are very, very backward, very, very slow. There's quite a few crops like barley, for instance, that is very temperature sensitive when you plant it. It's too early for planting barley, and we just have to wait for nature, prepare the fields, roll them down to conserve moisture, and just wait for that little bit of temperature to rise.
Great opportunity to clean out all your old spray cans and stuff.
Well, the thing is with spray cans, and people get all stewed up about what are we going to do with old sprays. Well, if the label's there, the best thing to do is read the label, look at
what?
Read the label.
Read the label, Dennis.
Before touching the can, read the label, and you'll then get an idea what you should be doing with that chemical or what you can do with that chemical. Probably check to see that it's still registered and allowable to be used on those crops. That's where it should be used, and that's a great way of getting rid of it and a great fate in the environment because all the work's been done. Also, when sprayers are pulling out of fields when they're empty and there's still some contamination in the tank, quite a few sprayers now have onboard water that they can redirect back into the spray tank.
Just sluice it all out.
Sluice it all out and put it through the boom, albeit at a diminished concentration level, spray it back out onto the paddock, and when the sprayer comes out of the paddock, it's almost clean.
Brilliant. Drift is another problem for spraying.
Absolutely. Well, there's lots of things we can do to stop chemical trespass, as we call it, or undesired placement of chemical. One, air induction nozzles are fantastic, and generally they combine the hydraulic mechanism of water with air, and you can use larger droplets, which obviously do less drifting than finer droplets. You can lower your pressure when you come close to sensitive areas, and you can lower your boom down closer to the ground. So there's quite a few things you can do. Also, you can use drift retardants if you're really in a sensitive area against sensitive crops.
Makes everything heavy, does it? Makes the droplets heavy, or how does that work?
Yes, it basically stops the fines coming out of the across the nozzle spectrum. You have coarse droplets and fine droplets. It reduces the number of fines, that they are the ones that will drift away. So it probably makes the droplet size more uniform. So,
and very briefly, start budgeting for your nutrients.
Yes, well, basically nutrient budgeting or oversee, it's quite simple. You measure what you start with in the paddock in terms of a soil test. You can then measure after harvest what you've got left, what the difference in between should be, your estimate of the crop that you're going to grow, and then you apply what that crop needs to produce that tonnage, and a neutral equation. That's
Dennis, thank you as always very much indeed. Next up, we're going to be talking to a young lady who knows all about exceedingly hard work and is going places in the world equine scene. Jess, another year of eventing looming. What are you up to?
A lot at the moment. I've got a lot of young thoroughbreds in, so it's sort of teaching them they don't have to gallop in circles and trying to get their brains together for the flat work and teaching them to jump. I've got a pretty exciting young team at the moment, but not really any experienced horses, so
that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's had its moments, but it's nice producing them. I suppose you know what you're getting. It's nice. Sue's given me a really good opportunity with Millie, the Aztec mare, so it's something that's done a little bit more, which is pretty good, but I really enjoy my young thoroughbreds. So
you said plural. How many are you getting fit?
We have 12 in work at the moment, which is pretty good. I've got about 4 on the permanent team that I want to keep going with. 1's 6, there's a 5-year-old and 2 4-year-olds. But everything else is basically on the market, trying to get to a manageable number. Got a bit wild.
12, that's a pretty big day.
Yeah, it's pretty full on at the moment, but no, it's good fun. I've got some good help at home, which is pretty useful.
Now, you mentioned Sue Fowler from Aztec. She's a great stalwart, isn't she?
Yeah, she's helped me out heaps. I worked for the Steiners last winter, and they sort of put me in touch with her, and she's given me some great horses and some good help, and has sort of started me breeding some of my own young ones. So, no, it's a great opportunity. She's a great help.
Now, you're talking thoroughbreds to a degree and putting them over fences for eventing. That's a big change.
Yeah, it is. They all seem to adapt pretty well. Like, I haven't had one that's really surprised me yet, but no, they've been good. I've got one Fritzy Boy at the moment for the Beyond the Barriers Challenge, which is a sort of thoroughbred makeover at Equidays, which is pretty exciting, but no.
You go flat racing thoroughbreds rather than steeplechasers?
I don't really have a preference. I have all flat ones at the moment, but the steeplechase ones turn into pretty good eventers as well, really. They're very, very versatile.
How do you make a horse understand from flat racing all those jumps, because some of them are pretty interesting?
Yeah, we take it really slow. Donna's been a good help slowing it all down and sort of getting it so they're just reading the questions and not using flat speed to just get you through it, sort of helping them just read the question a little more.
What do you mean, read the question?
So they've got time to think about it. Sort of instead of flat tack galloping, we bring them in and start them at the trot, so they've got plenty of time to just look at the fence and get a read on what's happening. And we find if you give them a good experience, they're pretty keen to give anything a go, really.
From picking up a horse to the time that it actually starts its first event, what's the time frame?
It varies. My first one I got off the track probably took me about 6 weeks before he went out to his first show, but this lot I had, the last two I've got off have been off the track 2 weeks and have jumped double clear around 80, so they're a pretty cool wee bunch of horses at the moment.
Now, out of that 12, how many will actually go to events?
There's 7 on the competition team at the moment, so I've got a backup rider who helps me out when we get stuck with all of them, but no, hopefully get down to 4 is the plan.
So how many riders do you have for an event, or do you do, obviously you must do multiples?
I do multiples, yeah. I try. I've got 5 that I'm riding personally, and the girl who helps me at home is riding a couple as well, so that's pretty full on, but yeah, I like to get the job done myself. I find it's more rewarding.
Of course, you know the horses, you know what they're capable of.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice.
The season starts about now?
Yeah, we've got a first event at Oamaru next weekend, which I've got 3 going to. All the young ones are back out for their first, well, one's got his first event of the season and the other 2 have their first 1-day or 2-day events, so it's pretty exciting.
And how long does it last for, the season?
We run all the way through to May, which is Tapo 3-day. It gets pretty quiet after the end of March, but we do have a few more events, so it's quite full on, really.
It's a buzz.
Yeah, I love it. It's certainly, I wouldn't do anything else other than eventing, really.
Can't we be exceedingly proud of our young people, and the equine industry is going from strength to strength. After the break, it's farm accounting.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Kerry, we're still in drought, even though we've had some southerlies and a bit of rain. Adverse conditions, and there's special things that can happen.
There is. A while ago I talked about the adverse area that has been declared for Marlborough, Canterbury and parts of Otago, and some special tax treatments that were there, which effectively meant that if you've got high income in 2015, you could actually defer part of it to 16. We've had a bit of a clarification that's come out and said that you don't actually have to be affected by drought. You can just simply be in that area and take advantage of the tax concessions.
Well, that's big.
Yeah, that's a big game changer for a lot of people, because 15 can be a sort of a huge year for some of the people that we've got looking after. So we're able to take advantage of this and actually move some income to 16 and potentially save them some tax.
Delay the tax would be a better way of putting it.
Yeah, or save it. It depends. Depends on how they're structured. So, like for a company, for example, you really are just delaying it. But if you're in a partnership or trading your own name, by spreading your income out over a couple of years, you can actually take advantage of some lower tax rates if you work it right.
Yeah, this is like a futures market, Kerry, isn't it, really? Because you're assuming that this year's going to be low and the next year's also going to be a bit low.
Yes, you've got to be pretty switched on to project what you're going to do in 16, because you don't want to sort of defer that income and then all of a sudden 16 be a boomer as well.
Yeah.
So as long as the person is actually switched on to what they're doing, we can take advantage of it.
That's why we've got chartered accountants, Kerry
Exactly.
Adams.
Yes. Yeah. So, but the important thing is you've got to talk to your accountant as they're doing your tax return. Once you've done your tax return, it's too late.
Yeah. So we're looking here at provisional tax for next year and that being reduced?
Yeah, that will be impacted. You'll save on use of money interest if you have such a big boom. IRD we can take the argument, well, you should have paid some tax previously, so we're going to charge you interest, so you can actually minimise the cost of that as well. So there's all sorts of things that actually disappear if you do it right.
And you're not expected to know off your own head, so you do go and see your chartered
accountant. You need to sit down with your accountant, yes.
So in the crux, it's basically where the adverse conditions are, and you don't actually have to prove suffering.
No, you don't have to. You just basically have to be in that area. So it's pretty simple now.
That's good. Evasion of tax, still the Inland Revenue are rightly very, very focused on it.
Yes, they're going at it hard, and they've actually just gone ahead and caught a guy and had him up before the courts. He hadn't filed 9 tax returns and 18 GST returns for himself and his company. And they basically said this guy was flouting his social responsibility, not compliant with the law, so they went after him. The judge has come out a little bit light, I think. He's got 4 months home detention, 120 hours community service, and a fine of about $45,000, which is pretty pathetic. But the IRD have said, look, if you're going to not comply with what you're supposed to do, we're going to come after you, and they've made an example of this guy, Nelson.
But wouldn't that be suicide? I mean, to not do your GST returns?
Oh, people think they can get away with it.
How?
No idea. It's just bizarre to us. They'll keep chasing you and chasing you. So this guy would have had a lot of chances. IRD would have been at him, but he's just totally ignored it. And he tried to hide behind a company in his son's name and did all sorts of little tricks. But they knew who he was and what he was doing, and he got caught.
I mean, the bottom line is to me that, and I've been involved with being behind with IRD, that they'll bend over backwards to help you.
Oh, exactly. They'll help any way they can. They'll encourage you, obviously, to go to your accountant first. If you think, oh, I'm a bit embarrassed or I don't really want to pay the accountant, they'll even send someone out and sit down with you and actually help you do it.
I had that.
Yeah.
Literally, and I said, well, I haven't opened anything that's got IRD on the outside of the envelope,
Yes.
because I just don't want to face it. And he said, well, you're 9/10 of the people he deals with are like that.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got a lot of officers that are trained like that. They understand what people are like. They know it's a bit of a scary thing. Oh, I've got behind.
Oh, it's scary. It's terrifying.
Yeah, and they'll work with you. It's just you've got to cooperate as well. If you don't and you just dig your toes in, well, you'll pay the price.
Bottom line is, if you owe money to anybody, you owe that money.
Yes. Yep. You can't get away with it.
It's not just IRD.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the guy who.
Exactly. At some point, someone's going to come knocking on your door and get that money. So you might as well just deal with it up front.
Yeah, and let's be reasonable and not think that they're idiots.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. So that comes really back to IRD and debt collection, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're stepping that up, and they've been doing that, for the last couple of years, and so they've got a lot of options. So the first thing is obviously they'll write to you when you don't file your return. If you get into that point, you should be talking to your accountant and just saying, hey, look, I need a hand, can't afford it, whatever. Don't ignore the letters that come out. If you do, then expect to get phone calls, and they'll put what they call their contact team onto you, and their job is to get the money. So they're either going to expect payment in full, or they're going to go for some sort of an instalment arrangement. You can try and ignore them. They'll keep progressing and keep chasing you. If they can't get a hold of you, then they'll go to the accountant, and obviously the accountant's going to try and get hold of you as well, and it really is up to you to talk to the IRD.
There was this time, Kerry, that IRD could go into your bank account and take money out.
Yes, they still can, and it's basically a stealth type method, and it's not just your bank account either. They can go to anywhere that you make sales. So let's say you send a load of lambs off to the works, they could actually write to the works and say, hey, look, we want that money deducted from the sales before it's paid out to the farmer. And if you're an older type age farmer and you've got the super, they can take it out of that as well. So they can come after you any way they want. So they've got full reign, and all it takes is a letter. And they'll just send a letter to whoever they want to deduct the money from, take it.
And those, whether it be the bank or whoever,
yeah,
they are liable. They have to do it.
They have to do it under the law. They must do it. They can't say no, we're not going to do it because the taxpayer said no. They must comply with it. And the way it's done is IRD don't care what consequence it has for you. If you've got money in your name somewhere, they can just take it. And if that means it's harder for you or tough, you had opportunities up until that point.
That's a fair way down the track, though, I would have thought.
It is a fair way down. That's really when it gets to the point of you ignoring everything. So you ignored the contact team, you ignored all the letters, you've done everything to basically avoid paying it. Then they'll just start taking this harder action.
And ACC is the same?
Yeah, ACC, they'll send the debt collection out. They don't actually give you much of a chance. They'll send the bills, send you a reminder letter, send you another overdue letter. Next minute you've got the debt collection letter in the mail, or they send the guys round to your door. But for them, they're pretty easy to negotiate with. They'll do all sorts of arrangements, and most of the time you can actually get it interest free. So you can use the government's money to fund your business for a period of time, which is what we recommend for everybody.
That's it.
Yeah, we don't. We say to people, if you get an ACC bill, don't pay it in full. Spread it out, say over 6 months. Use the government's money to fund your business, and you can spread that cost a little bit.
How often, Kerry, should you with ACC revisit to make sure you're on the same rate and the correct rate?
If you're on just standard ACC, then every time the invoice comes out from them, just have a look at what they're doing. If you're new to the business, they will put you down as manufacturing as default, because that's one of the highest rates, and so therefore you obviously need to get hold of them. If you're on one of their sort of special sort of cover plus extra, then it really is every time the policy comes up for renewal.
And if you're a worm farmer, you're in trouble.
Yes, yeah. Yes, there's a few little controversies around that one.
I think that'll be sorted out sooner rather than later.
Yes, indeed.
But it all comes back really to talking to your chartered accountant.
Yep, your accountant should always be your first port of call if you're in a bit of trouble. If you're struggling to file a return, or even if you can't pay, give them a call, because we've got the avenues into IRD, ACC. We can even help you with actually your suppliers as well, just negotiate. We've got the skills, we know how to do it. And
that's why you do 40 hours of learning every year.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
Kerry, thanks very much indeed. In just a moment, we're going to be talking to Sam Taylor. Now, he's a man who manages to get his sport involved very tightly with his work. Sam, for you, eventing is a family affair?
Yeah, it has been. We've been doing it for a while. I think my mother evented when she was younger, a long time ago, and I sort of took it up probably when I was about 8, and we've been doing it ever since.
When you were 8?
I think around about that sort of age, similar that sort of age anyway.
There must have been a lot of changes. I mean, for example, we've now dropped that steeplechase bit.
Yeah, it has, and the thoroughbred sort of went out of fashion a wee bit when that went. When the steeplechase and roads and tracks left, but they've come roaring back into contention as people have been able to improve their dressage and bits and pieces. But there are a lot more warm bloods that can compete without the roads and tracks aspect. So the warm bloods sort of have really come into their own. You'll find a lot of the Germans and the Dutch teams and even the English have a lot of warm bloods in their eventing teams.
There were those who would be suggesting that you need to find a horse with the brain.
Probably is, yeah. They can be tricky. You got to have the right personality to work with them. and you're right, you sort of often have to see a few before you get one that's a superstar. Whereas with the warm blood, you tend to sort of hit a wee bit more than you miss, probably. That's probably a contentious statement, but that's my experience anyway.
But they're highly strung.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and for what I'm doing, I don't really want that. I just don't have with what I'm doing. I don't have the time to sort of spend a whole lot of time dealing with that. So I'm more comfortable in the warm bloods these days. They're a little bit more forgiving.
At Rangiora Vet Centre, is it tough on horses doing a 3-day event?
Not too bad. It depends. In the South Island, we've only got one 3-star event, which is the highest level in New Zealand. 4 stars are the badmintons and burleys and Olympics and that sort of thing. It's not too bad. There can always be crashes and bits and pieces, but you can find that at any level. So we don't have a lot of injuries and things from 3-day events directly.
You're looking for a horse with stamina?
Yeah. One that you can keep going out every weekend and nice and sound. We obviously do a lot of soundness, lameness work, and a lot of pre-purchase work to sort of try and ensure that a horse that someone's buying is going to stay in one piece for a fair bit of time, and do a lot of pre-purchase work for overseas. So, if I go to sell a horse in a year or two's time, it'll get vetted overseas, and I won't do mine obviously, but that's the sort of thing we do.
And you're obviously into marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I recently I have anyway. When they sort of reach their limit, or we reach our limit as a combination, I sell them basically. I don't sort of keep them in the paddock till the day they die. I'm not sure you make a lot of money out of it when you work out what you've spent, but it's
you don't want to.
No. If you actually worked out what the hours and money that you've put into it over the years, you probably wouldn't make a lot of money. But it's nice to get a wee bit of reward at the end. Like I sold my down payment on my house was a horse that I sold to America, and although I probably would have, if I just put the money in the bank all those years, it sort of forced saving, I guess. I got lucky.
Now, this is very different as far as stresses are concerned than endurance racing.
It's different. I mean, the injuries are sort of different. It's a lot higher impact, so you tend to get, you do tend to get a lot more tendon and ligament injuries and joint injuries, but there's not the same endurance aspect in it as in endurance. So it's just different injuries really, I guess.
Sam, how do we compare with the rest of the world when it comes to eventing and eventing horses?
I think we do very well. There's still a good market with the dollar coming back. That'll be even better for us selling our horses. We compete really favourably, really. A lot of people like some thoroughbred in their horses. So like this horse here, he's half warm blood and half thoroughbred, so it just gives them a bit more endurance than a straight thoroughbred horse. I think we do very well on the world stage considering our size.
I guess the top international riders are helping our case overseas.
Yeah, dead right. Yep. They're often using New Zealand horses or New Zealand sourced horses, and so that really helps. Tim and Janelle and Andrew and Mark and those sort of guys have done sensationally in the last year or two. Well, for a long time, but recently they're doing well again.
So you started at age 8, and there's still a fair bit of riding in you.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sort of thing you don't have to. What Toddy's. What is he, almost 60, and he's still going around, so I've sort of haven't got any top horses at the moment. With I've got a young family, and with working at the vet centre, it's pretty busy, so between those two things, my top level competition's taken a bit of a back seat recently, but it's not to say I won't hope to do it again in the next few years. And
you've got some horses coming through?
Yeah, so I've just got a couple of young horses, I think 3 young horses at the moment, sort of 4 and 5 year olds, 4 and 5 year olds that we'll just tick over, get going, and it's quite good for where I'm at the moment. If we're busy at work, or things are all go, it doesn't matter if you don't work them. Whereas the high level horses, you need to work them. Do a certain, gallop them on a day or dressage them on a day. Whereas these guys, you can go, oh no, I'm too busy, and it's not a problem because they're young and it doesn't matter as much at the lower level.
And you've got Rachel to help you.
Yeah, Rachel's sort of the key to the yard. I sort of come in and often try and whip in here and ride in sort of about 40 minutes at lunch, so which is one of the reasons I don't use thoroughbreds, because sometimes if you're in a rush with thoroughbreds, they don't respond very well, whereas the warm bloods are pretty good. So I'm lucky. I give Rachel a text saying I'm 15 minutes away, and I'm pretty sport really.
A group of lovely people get involved with horses, don't they? After the break, we're going to be talking commerce and what you need to know about the stock market.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world. Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things. Make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Tom, stockbroker, what's the present situation as far as the economy is concerned?
Well, right now we're going through a low interest rate environment, so it's pretty lean pickings if you're looking for high interest rates or some reasonable income, certainly passive income. So yeah, we're seeing that's having quite an effect on the retirees, so mum and dad investors, people that essentially rely on interest-bearing deposits to pay their way. So yeah, it's a pretty tough environment right now. Lean pickings on the ground in terms of fixed interest, like your bond offerings, that type of thing. So mind you, at the same time, you're looking at the equity markets are doing quite well, although take out the recent market correction, and yeah, they've been tracking upwards, sort of based on that demand coming through for equities, because there are some high yields out there at the moment, and that's what a lot of investors are looking for.
You guys are talking in a totally different relationship language or whatever to we lay people. What does that mean? The fact that we're in that situation?
Well, what we've seen is the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has sort of cut their official cash rate a number of times now.
So that relates to the interest rates?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the Reserve Bank has an interest rate in which the banks, so the major banks in New Zealand, will put funds on deposit overnight with, and then those banks will change their interest rates based on what that rate is. So we're seeing that after an OCR cut, which is the official cash rate, you're seeing that sort of trickling down into bank deposit rates and mortgage rates as well. So mortgage rates have come down, happy days for property investors, but also obviously your interest-bearing deposits are, people are having some tough times there.
I was talking to an economist this week and he said the interest rates are going to stay low because the government's the biggest borrower and they don't want to pay lots, which I thought was an interesting twist. Tell me about the Chinese correction.
Yeah, so what happened there was essentially the Chinese currency, the yuan, it was devalued, and that was based on the mechanism in which the Chinese government, sort of based in Beijing, how they sort of essentially manage their currency. So currently the Chinese yuan is a managed currency, so it's somewhat pegged to the US dollar. And what happened is they changed the way that it's pegged and the way it's managed. So instead of, essentially they sort of they set a fixed rate in which is the exchange rate in which they want the yuan to trade against the US dollar. Mm-hmm. And then they buy and sell US dollars to essentially get that rate around that sort of fixed rate. So there's about a 2% buffer. So they'll be buying and selling US dollars, supply and demand forces sort of kick in, and yeah, they essentially bring it in to sort of hover around that rate that they set themselves.
Because I mean, it hit the media and it seemed as though it was going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate that that seems to be the case quite a bit. The sort of mainstream media do like a little bit of a story on bad days in the market, and it certainly does nothing to sort of quell the fears or the panic with a lot of investors.
So people instantly went into panic selling?
I wouldn't say they instantly went into panic selling. A lot of people got cold feet, certainly amateur investors or sort of less experienced investors. So what we saw was a lot of mum and dad investors started selling out of the likes of Genesis, Meridian Energy, some of those big power companies that were IPO'd. And I think that came down to the fact that it may have been their first time in the markets. They hadn't been through something like this before. And essentially they're just trying to conserve their capital or take a bit of money out.
Well, it's just sort of natural, really, Tom.
Oh, it's completely understandable, but at the same time, that's where essentially investment advisors earn their crust, because nothing has actually happened to the company. The company's still doing what it did a week ago or a month ago.
The dividends are still there.
The dividends are still there. In fact, because the price has dropped away, your dividend yield is a factor of both your price and the dividends in which the company's paying. So should your price drop away like it had, you see that dividend yield go up. And people can expect higher sort of yields on those investments.
And you get a massive amount of phone calls from people who are experienced and they say, when should I buy because the price is coming down?
That's exactly right. And we ring people up as well that have been looking to get into stocks that were sort of a little bit expensive. And you got your watch list or your wish list, and all those stocks have come down. They're now on sale. So essentially you go to town and you do a bit of spending. And so the only situation whereby there's a sale and not everyone's running in the door to buy. So it's sort of a bit counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. I mean, it's the unloading and giving the opportunity for other people to buy more. It's really, I don't know how you guys do it.
It is testing at times, but essentially you've just got to sort of look at the fundamentals of a company. What does it do? Are the management sort of pretty competent in what they do? And is there a future for that company? And looking at those fundamentals, if the company's great, that's the time in which you get in at those lower levels.
Do you find that you have to sort of hold people's hand and take them through the minefield?
Yes, especially when you have a market correction, because people ring up and they essentially want you to guide them through the process. And that's where we earn our crust, is holding a few hands and letting people know that at the end of the day the sun will rise again. Tide goes out, it comes back in again. It's those sort of situations. You've sort of got to take the long game, a long view, because that's the way it works.
Tell me about the Dow Jones and all those other things that come up on our network news.
Yeah, so 6 o'clock news rolls by, business section crops up. They sort of flash Dow Jones and sort of S&P 500 indexes at you. What are these things? Well, the S&P 500 index and a Dow Jones Industrial Average, they're essentially an indicator of how the stock market's sort of been performing based on what's included in that index and how it's made up. So to sort of define what an S&P 500 index is, that's the largest 500 publicly traded companies on the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange.
A New York Stock Exchange?
Yeah, so they're included within this basket, so to speak, and that index is sort of tracking what's happened throughout the day. So in that basket of goods, everything might have gone up by, say, 1%, or a few will go up, a few will go down, but if the average is 1%, then that S&P 500 index has gone up 1% for the day. So it's essentially giving you a bit of an indicator of how you've gone.
And if something like the mid-80s or late 80s hits again, that disappears into the red arrow looking down, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You see a lot of red on the screen. It's no good. But as I said earlier, it's worth keeping a bit of powder dry, because when those times hit, for a lot of those companies, not a lot has changed apart from the fact that the stock market's been hit. As long as it's not a systemic problem throughout the whole economy. Or
and
the world
come
economy.
Back up again, and the dividends still get paid.
You'd expect it to. Provided that the cash still comes in the door for the company, you'd expect those dividends to still get paid. But at a higher yield because you're buying low.
Very briefly, what's the fundamental in investing for somebody who has sold a farm or has got some money all of a sudden? Yeah,
so fundamentals are key with investing. So you've got to do your homework. That's the only time.
Go to somebody who can explain it.
That's exactly right. That's the only time in which you're going to get rewarded by the markets. So looking at investing, it's about 50% fundamentals, 50% market sentiment. And so market sentiment being like the media, people talking, all that sort of stuff, and fundamentals being how how much debt does that company have relative to assets? How has it been performing over the long term?
Talk to somebody who can explain it.
That's right, yeah. Have a chat to a professional and they're more than happy to walk you through it.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Tom's interview and all the others that are on the program you will find on our website, which is ontheland.co.nz. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching the program or you've just missed it, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.